Welcome back to A Day in the Life Retirement on a Shoestring YouTube channel. Today is day 4 of hiking Fern Cliff State Park. Today it's just me and Bella, okay? We're gonna take this first hike. It's kind of a cloudy, overcast day, but the temperature is just beautiful. I can hardly believe that this is the first part of April. Okay, but anyway, we're gonna take you along on this hike. We're right up here. We're gonna video the trailhead. Now maybe, here we go. There's Bella. Our old sidekick Bella. Right up here is the walkaway trail. We'll check out the storyboard or map, whatever you want to call it. Beautiful little dogwood right next to it. Blackjack Oak Trail. Never been on this little trail, but there's a first time for everything. Come on, Bella. Gotta get a little closer to the board here. Okay. You see the arrow there that says we are here, okay? So we're gonna enter the trail right there, and I guess we'll just walk down that way. Again, says use extreme caution because dangerous, again, areas exist in this park. Uh-oh, come here. Come here. You can't play with the puppy. How are you this morning, Bella? Come on, let's go. Let's go this way. Now, if you'll quit pulling, I'll let you loose a little bit. Okay, here we go. Beautiful, beautiful. And again, for all you people out there that are retired or getting ready to retire, don't become sedentary. Sit home on the couch. Get out and experience nature. And Southern Illinois has a lot to offer. And Fern Cliff State Park has 10 different walking trails that we have here. And we're gonna try to walk as many as we can until we leave here. We're gonna leave Monday, so we're not gonna be here videoing tomorrow. So this is Friday, okay? So we won't be here tomorrow. We'll be at our congregation, our church, the Philadelphia Assemblies tomorrow, but we'll be here all day on Sunday. And the weather forecast says that it's going to rain all day tomorrow anyway, so hopefully that'll fire up all these waterfalls, and on Sunday for our Friday's video of next week we can use that video of those waterfalls. That's the plan. We'll see how that all pans out. So I'm going to go this way to start because I saw that we're kind of entering at the middle of this Blackjack Trail, and we're gonna walk this way a little bit. Wow, look at this overview. Down there is the lake, okay? And looks like it's just right there. We're gonna, Patty and I and Bella are gonna walk that, and that's 1 mile around that lake. Now, in Southern Illinois, or Illinois, this is trout season right now. So there'll be people probably trout fishing. I used to trout fish But I'm not a fan of these farm-raised trout that the state raises and then lets them go in these shallower lakes. And then it's kind of like shooting fish in a barrel, okay? So it's not really a challenge. They bite a lot, but they kind of taste mushy to me, okay? Those trout that are raised that way. And just like any fish, farm-raised fish are not as good as wild caught, just like salmon, okay? So I'm not a fan of that, but I tried it for a few years because I had some people from a congregation or church that I used to go to, okay, that was a big time fan of doing that. I'm not sure they still do it, but they did. That was like 20 something years ago. So wow, how fast time gets away. But again, they do have bluegill and bass and crappie. And I know that because it wasn't long ago that Patty and I came out here one day, which we didn't video that. And we walked around the lake. And after the winter, somehow, I guess the lake had turned over. That's what they call it. And there was a lot of dead fish around the outside. So I haven't talked to anybody yet this year, but they lost a lot, but probably not enough to really hurt the lake. Wow, really some beautiful overviews up here. Some people think all this looks the same. Well, it doesn't look the same to me. And I know video doesn't do it justice, but wow, wow, wow. I just love the outdoors. I love to get out and experience these things, even by myself. And some people say, well, it's not really safe to hike by yourself. On these short trails, I think it's pretty safe, even for us old fogies. So, you know what? I feel young. I know I talk about that a lot, about calling myself an old fogey. I'm trying to get my mind wrapped around being 70 so that I don't do foolish things, okay? Because my mind would tell me I could still do what I did when I was 20. And let me tell you something, or what you would call your heart, and your heart will deceive you. And if you get deceived about being 70, you're going to end up hurting yourself. And that might shorten your own time. Scripture talks about, deceiving your own self. And boy, oh boy, don't we do that. Especially about our age. I know people, still riding motorcycles past 70. I mean, quite a few people that I know do that. And I'm tempted to do that. Of course, again, I'm living on that shoestring budget. So that might not be on my, as far as my, how should I say, within my budget. But if it was, I'm sure that I don't need to do that, okay? And there's a lot of things that we shouldn't do, but there's also a lot of things we can still do, okay? We don't want to limit ourselves either in the opposite direction and stay home because we're afraid that we're going to do something to hurt ourselves. But we can't, like I mentioned in the two previous videos, that we used to rappel. We'd climb up these rocks when I was in high school, and boy, that sounds so attractive to me, even now, to climb up there with one of those rappelling belts and rappel off. But I'm not going to do it because common sense should reign somewhere in there and tell you that that's not wise. But if we let our heart or our mind, our emotions rule us, we'd probably try that. And I know that that's the kind of line that I try to walk, again, by not limiting myself too much so that I don't go out. Because, fear is not a good thing, okay? But respect for things is quite something else. So there's a balance that we need to learn in life and in all areas, that, you know, not to be afraid, but also not to be foolish. Very important distinction we need to work on as human beings. This is really something back here. I truly love these walks. And again, Fern Cliff State Park is loaded. So if you're thinking of camping or hiking in Southern Illinois, give Fern Cliff a shot, because they definitely got the views, they got the trails, they got a fishing lake, they got showers, they got it all. I know one thing in, I think it was the last video that just premiered this morning, I mentioned the price of camping for people that lived in the state of Illinois or residents. But I think my wife talked to them and they said that they charge the same for out of state. So there's not a price difference for people that are not from Illinois. And I assure you they are in a lot of states, okay? So a lot of people talk a lot about Illinois being a high tax state, and they are higher for gasoline and some of things like that. They have a higher, what they call motor fuel tax. And that motor fuel tax makes our gas 20 to 30 cents a gallon higher. And right now, that's painful anyway, okay? But we also got fairly good roads as far as major highways and things, and they keep up with the maintenance on them fairly well. So all those things benefit us, okay? The state. It takes taxes to run a state. Unfortunately, it seems like not just Illinois, but in every state, the low income and what we call, again, the middle of the road income earners pay all the taxes. And the billionaires don't ever pay their fair share because they can afford to pay lobbyists, and they'd rather pay lobbyists to get out of paying taxes than they would to pay the taxes. And that affects a lot of the services that are for the low and middle income people. And now we're in this war, and they're talking about reducing those even more because we're in war. Taking away child care, things of that nature. What about the poor people? Okay, what about the people that need that extra help to be able to get out and work, which they're encouraging us to do? A lot of things just don't make sense today to me. Maybe that's just because I'm old school. One of my friends told, that he thought it was humble of me that I would admit that I have some amount of cognitive dissonance. I'm having a hard time spitting that out. But we all have that. We lived in a completely different world than what people live in today. Completely different. Unfortunately, we have to adjust to what happens in the world because we're not of this world, but we have to live in this world. So we need to be able to adjust. We need to not be filled with hate for any of our brothers and sisters, whether we agree with them, on religious beliefs, or whether we agree with them on political beliefs, okay? Because if we're, following the scriptures truly and not using the scriptures to justify how we act, okay, then we're gonna not be like that. We're not gonna hate other people, even people we disagree with vehemently. We still love them. And anybody that teaches anything different than that, about what the Bible says or the scripture, they need to go back and reread, because that's not what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to love our neighbor as ourselves. And on that hangs all the law and all the prophets. So Again, this is not a religious channel, but I'm out here by myself and these things are coming to my mind. Hopefully they don't repel you, because I believe these things strongly, that we need to, you know, make sure we understand and follow best we can the word if we're believers. If you're not a believer, I still love you. You know, there's a lot of people out there that's so discouraged with all the things that happen in their lives that don't happen the way they want them to. So then they turn around and blame our Creator for those things. Well, that's not how it works, nor does anything that makes any sense work like that, okay? Everything is not about us. Everything is about everything, okay? And our Creator loves the whole more than he does the smaller part, the one portion. That's why things happen that they do. And life here on earth is strictly to prepare us and test us to see whether we're going to be fit to live in the kingdom. So whether or not you believe those things, that's up to you, okay? And if you don't, again, that's your right living in the United States, at least for now, to have those differences in belief. You know, I vehemently disagree with people that are Muslims, but I don't hate Muslims at all, okay? And there's people that are Muslims that feel that same way, but there's also the opposite, and there's the same thing in people that claim to be believers that, you know, that they actually hate people that either think differently than them or that or maybe look different than them or have different cultures than them. And that's not what it teaches. The scriptures teach, not even the Old Testament, that people like to talk about that mean old God, okay, of the Old Testament. That's just not what it is at all. Creator told the Egyptians to love the stranger because they were strangers or foreigners in the land. Yeah, there's times when, you know, Yahuwah, the Father does use war, okay? But he doesn't like war. And anybody that acts like that, you know, even with David, the only way that if our Creator comes to us and says, go do this or do that, a war, that's a different thing, okay? And if you do that, that's not against his word. But if you're doing that and you're justifying your deeds because of your greed or your desire for power, then that's definitely a problem, okay? So, wow, we got another trail going back up that way. We're gonna turn around and go back, and I'm not gonna video back. Okay, I didn't video this, but there's an overview here on the way back that I decided I wanted to add in. Good thing I edit these videos, because I can always change and cut things out that I don't want in there. But we got a chair here for an overlook, and it's pretty right now. But wow, we've got some those loblolly pines that I've talked about here that they planted back in the 30s when they cut a lot of the hardwoods out of here and sold them. But they're right there in our view. We see these other trees, and this is another one of those bluffs that we've been looking at with these overviews. And I just thought I'd walk down here and get a little shot of this and put this in the video. I got to watch my dog. She doesn't have any fear. She's liable to run right off of here. But as you can see, that's a pretty good drop. And if we look right over that way, we could kind of get a better idea of this. Let me stay, baby. Let me zoom in. But there's the shot, okay? That's really something. You can kind of get a lay of the land. We're up on a high knoll here. Okay, here's where we went to the right back here. Now we're gonna travel on up to the left of this campground that goes up to Deer Ridge. Campground's where we started this and where we're camping. And we're gonna walk the other part of this, come on, trail. A lot of these trails, I think most of them are interconnected. Okay, so if you keep walking, you're gonna end up covering a lot of the ground, maybe on a different path that you already walked. And we've been down to the picnic grounds 2 or 3 times, 2 I believe. And I don't wanna head back down to that because I wanna show you some new sights. Not sure what that noise is there. It might be the water purification station. I'm not sure what that is. Come on, Belle, this way. So as I was saying before, you know, we really have, this country has people of all nationalities, all faiths, and we really need to have respect for one another and not hate and blame other groups, especially since we ourselves have done the same. You know, you can talk about the Muslims and how they hate us, and you can look and see that we've done some horrendous things too. But if you only have eyes to see for what someone else does and not for yourself, then you're perverting the scripture. That was a truck. He was bringing fuel. Let's get up on the trail here, Belle. A couple of ladies said they're going to walk all the trails today. That's awesome. I don't think I could handle quite doing all of them. I think she said 10 miles. I could do 10 miles on flat land. I've done it, over 11, you know, within the last so few years. I hiked all the way from Stone Fort, where I live, all the way to Tunnel Hill, which is a little over 11 miles one way. And then I rode my bicycle back. And all those things kind of stretch us and test us. I like doing that. At this time, I'm actually thinking very soon about doing that trip again to prepare myself, maybe, okay, again, this is maybe, because nobody knows what tomorrow holds, to walk the River to River Trail. And that would be an accomplishment for someone my age. Take me a week at least, probably. I think some of them do it in 3 days, but I know I couldn't. I'd need a hammock, because as I've mentioned a couple of times already, these old bones aren't sleeping on the ground, but in a hammock, I'm pretty sure I could handle that. And there are places along the River to River Trail, if you watch a lot of YouTube, okay, that you can replenish your supplies. I'm sorry for the angle on the shot here, but I gotta watch my footing, okay? I think this is heading down just to the lake, I remember, and so this strikes off another trail for me. Bella, you're just enjoying yourself by taking in all the other dogs' smells and putting your smell down. Yeah, I remember where I seen this trailhead right down here, and like I said, it loops all the way back around and ends up in the picnic area. So I've already been down there twice, and I'm not sure I want to hike down there again. So we're gonna go on down, and when we hit the road here at the head of this trail, again, I will pick it up again when we get to the next trail. Well, we're gonna make sure that we cover a goodly amount of trail here. Okay, we gotta do a little walking to get to the next one. I guess I could have taken my car down if I would have knew this. But any way you go, if you have a car, you're gonna have to go walk, backtrack, and get to the car. So we're just gonna walk over, and when I get back with this last trail that I'm gonna walk before Patty gets with us, I'm going to call her, I think, and have her come get me. Or come get us, me and Bella. So, let's go. Okay, we're getting ready to get on the Round Bluff Nature Preserve Trail, and we're gonna walk the Round Bluff Nature Preserve, and Bella and I are gonna go tackle this. Okay, let's go, Bella. You ready? Here we go. I think I've attacked this from the other way. We'll see. I'm gonna see how far I can get on this. But I haven't approached it from this angle anyway. But as a good friend of mine just pointed out to me, and I don't think he'll mind if I use his name. His name's Doug Edwards. Him and I coached football. As a matter of fact, he just called me when I was walking between one trail and another. And I wanted to point out, you know, I know you saw our video the other day, a couple of weeks ago, I think, lost in Bellsmith Springs. Okay, if you ever get lost in the wilderness, and believe me, Shawnee National Forest is big enough to get turned around and lost, especially if you get off the trails, the main trails. You want to make sure that you understand that a lot of places, now Fern Cliff not being one of them, we have a good signal here. I think it's because we're so close to 57. But in a lot of these parks in Southern Illinois, you're not going to have a signal. So you're not going to have access to a compass. You're not going to have access to maps and directions. I think most places will work with a satellite GPS system if you have one of those. But some of the things that you need to remember is that if you're walking, always remember that to get your bearings and see which way's north and south, that moss generally grows on the north side of a tree, okay? And if you're lost, it's always a good idea to head down. And if you can find a stream, you follow that stream, it's gonna come across to a bridge, or it's going to come across to a highway or a road. So those are just some of the things. And again, as Greg Ovens says, don't ever go out in the woods without a lighter, okay? Because if you get stranded overnight, you can always find a way to make fire. Now, there's even ways to make fire that even when things are wet like they are right now. So you need to look for things like inside of dried out tree stumps and try to dig out some wood like that. Maybe you get some leaves that are you can find under an escarpment, you know, that are dry. And you can use those to start a fire, because at night, even in the summertime, it could be a problem, you know, with the temperatures falling and you having freezing to death even in the summer. In 40-degree weather for sure, our body temperatures go down quickly, especially if we're laying on the ground, okay? Because you can't keep going forever. Sooner or later, you have to rest. So another phone call. Again, it kind of interrupted. You won't notice it much, but it was my good friend and brother, Doug Vickers, that is taking care of all our chickens and watering all our seedlings. And he called me to let me know that my reverse osmosis under the sink system that we use all our drinking water and make ice for, was leaking through a weep hole on the side of the spout. And it's been doing that for some time. And if you know how to fix that, please put it in the comments section below, because I need to clean that. It's a vent. I need to be able to figure out how to flush that out so it doesn't leak. Reverse osmosis, actually, you don't get 100% conversion. In other words, it takes more water to run through that filter than what comes out the other side. So if you've got a leak on top of that when it's filling, I don't know about you guys, but my water bill is very expensive. It's over, it runs $100 or more, you know, but that includes sewer and trash. So again, I'm not complaining. I don't think we're getting a short end. I think everybody's paying. Prices are higher, you know, for them to run a water service and sewer, again, treatment plant. So all those things cost money, and I understand that. Living in a situation, I'm thankful that I've got sewer and I don't have to depend with a septic tank, but I do have one in case those sewers stop working. I can rehook that right up and not miss a beat. But if that happens, we'll probably won't have our water either. And I have 2 shallow wells there at the house, and I'm gonna have to make sure I have good access to that water as well in case that happens. Don't ever underestimate how quickly things can get bad, because I assure you they can. Our parents and grandparents, okay, if you're younger than me, a lot of those people lived through the Great Depression. Some were born, like my father, he was born in 29, and his dad, my grandfather, told me they were so poor they couldn't even notice. I think Alabama wrote a song about that as well. So, but I tell you, those people back then weren't expecting it either. And a lot of the things that were happening back then were going on now, okay? There's a lot of cycles in life, and a lot of things happen in sevens. Every 7 years, according to my research, every cell in your body is replaced. So you're a brand new being or human every 7 years. There's also 7-year cycle with the stock market. See, for years I worked in the financial services. I had a Series 6 and 63 securities license, so I was able to do mutual funds and different things like that. And I got out of that and went directly with just insurance, because I just didn't like that bit. I just really didn't like doing that. That's probably the best answer with it. But there are those 7-year cycles. You have a major adjustment every 7 years. So if you understand that, which a lot of the people that have money do, and I did, and I took advantage of, but life happens sometimes. And the nest eggs and things that we had built up, we don't have them anymore. So thus, a day in the life, retirement on a shoestring. So please understand that even though I don't have a lot of money now, I understood the financial services, and I tried. Even when I worked for others, I had a 401k when I was in my early 30s. I got into the financial services industry in the 1987, I believe, when I first got my insurance and investments licensing. Through a good friend of mine helped me to get into that, and I mentioned him earlier, Doug Edwards. Him and I coached football together, and I coached football, not always with him, but a lot, and learned a lot of the things I know about coaching youth and football from Doug Edwards. And we're very good friends to this day. I talk to him not as much as I'd like. Okay, so, and that's not Doug's fault. A lot of that is me not calling. He's been trying to reach me on social media on PM, and I have been not looking. So I'm gonna make sure I do that. But he called me this morning, and I'm glad he did. And like I said, I've learned a lot from Doug. But I learned a lot about motivation from him, and I use a lot of that. But I learned motivation from my high school football coach. His name was McCullough from Festus, Missouri. Okay, I remember him telling me a lot of things, and one of them was the same thing that Doug reiterated to our kids, and that was practice doesn't make perfect. I remember Doug saying that, and I remember my coaches ringing in my ears telling me that same exact thing. He said, perfect practice makes perfect. And Doug said the same thing. If you practice error, that never will make perfect. But if you practice perfectly and you work until you achieve perfection, now perfection is not something that you're going to be able to reproduce every time. But if you work hard and really deal with trying to have that perfection, you will. You'll find it in yourself at the right time. And again, another thing that Doug and I taught the kids was a chain is only as strong as its weakest link. Okay? So if you make an error, that causes the machine to make an error. Okay? Which your play will not be good because, again, your chain is only as strong as its weakest length. Okay? So you really always have to give your best out there in order to have championship teams. And you guys can believe this or not believe that, but we had many championships, undefeated seasons, playing with a town. I don't remember the population. I'll look it up and put it in the description below. But we were playing against towns like Belleville, Alton, Fairview Heights. I mean, if you look at up there around that St. Louis area, and yet we were being undefeated, by sometimes superior athletes. But, the man that wins the race is not always the strongest or the fastest, but rather the man that thinks he can. And that's what we worked on. Physical, because again, you have to be in excellent physical shape to have the endurance, because he that endures to the end will win. Okay, if you give up in the middle, you're gonna lose. Okay, walking up these steps, got the camera down. That's because I'm getting tired. Sorry about that. But you have to be in perfect mental, physical, and even emotional mindset to be a winner at any sport and in life in general. So, we did that. We would run one play on offense with those kids until they got it perfect. Then we would run a new play. And we wouldn't run the old play. We would run that new play till we had it perfect. And maybe the next night at practice, maybe, according to what happened, we would repeat that. Okay? And if you made a mistake on the first play we ran the day before, you might not run that second play that day. But that kind of commitment is what builds championship teams. It's not how many plays you run, it's how well you run your plays. So if you're in football, hopefully that's, I'm gonna walk beside this. This does not look safe. There was a yellow tag on it, and if I wouldn't have been paying attention, I might have fell through. I noticed there was a step missing in the last one. Falling is my worst enemy at this age. See, the deer have been going down this way too. Almost thought I heard a chicken. Sure it was a squirrel or something. So there's a lot in life to learn. And a lot of people, I know I wasn't any different when I was younger. I thought them old fogies really didn't know what was going on. And that's why I a lot of times did what I wanted to do and didn't pay attention to my elders or my peers. I did better with my coach, I guarantee you, than I did with my mother and father. And that's my error. And they're both gone now. And I certainly can't do anything about it, because and telling them now it's not going to work. I should have did that when they were alive. I should have told them how much they meant to me. And I didn't always do that. I did, but I didn't always. And I bid myself that problem, and hopefully they'll, they understood. Let's put it that way. But man, my coach, he made things perfectly clear to me in high school on how I needed to conduct myself. I had hair down to my middle of my back, kind of like Bob Seger, okay, back in those days. And my coach let me play even though they had because I wouldn't cut my hair at that time. I was too proud for that, okay? Like Bob Seger, that's, if you remember him back in the 80s or even the late 70s, he had his hair back like that. And I used to ride a 900 Kawasaki back in them days. Woo! This is quite the climb. And I thought it was something. My coach wanted me to cut my hair, and I wouldn't do that. But there was a lot of things he wouldn't sidestep. So learn early in life that older people do know something. Have respect for them. One day they won't be here, and you won't be able to share it with them. While they're here, share with them. Again, parents, love your children and love your wife like our Messiah loved the called out ones, the ecclesia, or what's called the church. Because you're only here for a short time, and you'll be the most sorry if you don't live by those golden rules that are in the scriptures, the Beatitudes, places like that. Even if you don't believe, that is the best advice that you could do, is do unto others as you would have them do unto you. So hopefully I'm not too preachy on this. That's not my intent. I'm going to try to stay away from that one, especially when I got someone else to talk to. But I'm talking to you because I'm talking from my heart. I'm letting you know that, a lot of things, you viewers, there might be things we don't agree on. That's okay. That's what's made the U.S. a great country that it is that people could disagree and they could find compromise. But today, we can't find compromise. And again, there's nothing wrong with strongly held beliefs either. I think that's what makes us who we are. And voicing those and expressing your opinion is so important. We're not going to grow emotionally unless we have those kind of things, anchors in our life. And that doesn't have to be just scriptural stuff. That's just life in general. But if you read the scriptures, you will find that those things are the best advice that we can have in life. Like I said, we might not all agree about them, but one thing I know for sure, Messiah, he said the two greatest commandments were to love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, soul, mind, and strength, and your neighbor as yourself. Okay? And he said, on these two hang all the law, which is speaking of the first 5 books in the Old Testament. He said again, love those 2 commandments, loving the Father and loving others, your brother. All that law and even the prophets and the writings like Psalms and different things hang or they are summed up in these 2. And that doesn't mean that those things don't mean anything anymore. That just means that that's the goal. You know, there's places in there that says they talk about the end of the law. And the word for end simply means goal. Go back and look up the word, find it. It says it's the goal. Okay, so it says the Messiah is the goal of the law. So what does that mean? That means his life is the goal. And everywhere it says to pick up his life and follow him. And that means live and act as he acted. Now, are we going to do that perfect? No way. Okay? But we got to try. Okay? Because that's what repentance is all about. So again, I'm getting all preaching a sermon. That's not my intent. Let's talk about something else. Because some people are going to get off the channel because I'm doing that. Please don't do that. I don't do that normally. It's just today that I'm doing that, I promise you. It may happen sporadically, but it's not going to be the point of the channel. This is a day in the life, retirement on a shoestring, and what we do for fun, and what we do to thrive and not just survive. Boy, and that's something. This is such a beautiful thing. See all those holes and things? It looks like water, like the ocean rocks, if you've been to the ocean, where they slapped on there repeatedly. Again, it could be from an inland sea. It could be from the Great Flood. We don't know. We weren't here. We just see what we see. Okay, we're 18 minutes and 2 seconds into this trail. I got a feeling it's coming to a head. And hopefully, you guys have enjoyed me taking you around here today. Because I've certainly enjoyed going. I've enjoyed sharing with you some things that I believe. And again, I'm not going to do that all the time. So don't be afraid, because this is not about that. This is about enjoying life and being happy for what we do have, and not, being complaining all the time about what we don't have. And things could get a lot harder, so I just want you to be mentally prepared for what may be coming. Heck, I don't know. It might get better tomorrow. This thing we're going through with this war might wrap up, and somehow that strait might get opened up. But if I was you, I wouldn't bet my survival on that. I'd be prepared. And I'm not a prepper, okay? But I do believe there's nothing wrong with being prepared for things to come. That's why we have the prophets, okay? Including John in Revelation. So pay attention to the signs of the times. So we're coming up on the end of the trail. And again, I hope you enjoyed this video. And you don't feel I was too preachy. Hope you learned some things about my background in football and different things. Played baseball too, okay? I was a catcher on my high school team, and a darn good one. And I was also considered for that. I played some Legion ball and different things, as a lot of you might have. I could throw them out at second base from home plate, even in high school. So that was a pretty good thing. I like the idea of being captain of my team. So that's what my coach sold me on that, different coach. And I was very good in football too. We had a great football team in Festus, Missouri and Jefferson County, Missouri. But I didn't play there until my senior year. I played my senior year at Marion. So, but anyway, hope you enjoyed this video and enjoyed this hike in Ferncliff State Park, the Round Knob Trail. Anyway, this is the end of this hike, but we got one more to do today, so hang in there. You won't even miss me when I'm gone.